Welcome back, General. We have a very reminiscent opening here. If you don't see the similarities, this is essentially a Chinese remake of the US shell map from the first game. We also see a new unit in action, one that we don't typically see anywhere else. One, because they don't build them, and two, because the game doesn't really do anything to show it off. Near the bottom middle of our screen right now, we have the ECM tank. It's sort of similar to the microwave tank.
Statements of support from Europe's capitals flow to the Premier's desk as scattered GLA units are destroyed by Chinese divisions. Our leader in turn praised his field commanders for low civilian casualties and collateral damage in war zones. The General of the Army reports one last GLA stronghold to be cleansed before peace is achieved. And with NATO now a political afterthought, China has proposed a newly formed alliance with Europe to share military and economic strategies. This is Zhang Meiying at our Middle East Bureau.
Thanks to your remarkable efforts in Halberstadt, the GLA are all but finished. US Intel has located the last GLA stronghold outside of Hamburg. Unfortunately, we were too late to help the Americans in this area, and the GLA captured their base. Build your forces.
Welcome back once more, General. So, as I was saying before, we have the ECM tank, which essentially allows for a sort of it's electronic countermeasures, essentially, and it protects units in an area from rockets. It's sort of like a over-engineered Avenger, I guess we'll call it. It's nice, but I don't ever use it. Now, this mission can be rather tough, not only because the US are apparently incompetent enough to never build or destroy their own things, even attempting to sell them is not an option, apparently. But you'll have a lot of units swamp you really quickly. So in order to defend against this, the first thing I suggest to do is to grab all of your Helix helicopters, upgrade them however you see fit. At least one Gatling cannon should be ideal, if not recommended, and come down here and essentially destroy everything the GLA has.
Make enough fly.
Technically, you could get some infantry to come in here and try to capture the defensive guns as well. I don't really want to take the risk. I would have to capture both of them at the same time. I don't really know if it's even possible. So blow them up and then just capture everything else and get a significant amount of money. GLA doesn't really pass by there too frequently, and honestly, build a few defenses and you should be fine. Additionally, one of the things I noticed while attempting to find the best strategy for this mission was that in this southern corner of the US map, there's one, the supply drops, which are essential to destroy, but they also have the supplier center, and depending on how you move the helix, you can technically target the supply center and destroy it, but it's very hit or miss. The Patriot missile system that's right next to it seems to be able to target a little bit further than it might really be able to, and the helixes don't quite shoot from a far enough range. It's not really worth losing any units if you don't have to. You're kind of strapped for money, at least to a small degree, and you don't have enough production up right away. Not to mention that we can see the effects of a Jarman Kell walking nearby as he's taking out one of my nuke launchers. We also get the highly rated Internet Center. The earlier complaints, or the complaints from the base game of hackers on the Chinese, in the Chinese arsenal, being vulnerable at all times, which is entirely true, was rectified by giving them an entire building all to themselves. Any hacker that is inside continues to hack. They don't heal, as far as I'm aware, but it offers them some safety. They also continuously gain experience, just like they would if they were out and about, or like units that garrison in other structures.
We have big plans.
It's safe to say that if there's a target that you should go after in this mission, it's actually not the US base first. Not in my opinion, and this is for two reasons. We've seen it before in, I believe, a previous campaign, where the AI, if it doesn't have its main command center, it won't be able to use its powers. Powers that it maybe not depends on, but certainly tries to make good use of. So if you don't want to have to deal with sneak attacks or with rebel ambushes, go after the GLA base first. Honestly, the issue as well going after the US base is that there's just a lot of defenses, and you don't really have anything that, I don't want to say works properly, but helixes are large and slow. There's a lot of anti-air on the US side of their arsenal. Adventures comes to mind, all the Patriot missile systems, rocket defenders, well, you get the idea, basically. Not to mention also their jets can hit air units. So with all that in mind, it's better to just focus on the GLA, who have less of a focused anti-air arsenal. There's also a certain number of items that you kind of should just blow up, since there's no point if you can't take them. Also, you have to be really careful when dealing with tunnel networks, because they will also always dump out all of their contents, and makes for a rather nasty surprise against any helixes you might have. In general, if you're going with Battle Masters or Overlord tanks, you don't really have to worry too much about it, but it's still a concern. Also, there's a bit of a fun behavior with height levels.
A particle cannon has been activated.
China is under attack!
The other benefit of the Internet Center, at least in this case, is that the US, or at least the enemy AI, loves to focus it, like, a lot. I don't think there's a time where they won't try to hit it with a ion or particle cannon. And because of that, you can kind of ensure a little bit of safety. You don't have to necessarily worry about power going down as long as you have an internet center that's maybe a little bit further out of the way than what I did. Additionally, if you're paying attention and you don't completely avoid looking at your internet center, as long as you shift the hackers out a little bit, they won't die to any of the lasting fire damage on the ground.
I will take care of it. Overlord is waiting. Extra
Unit lost.
Helix on the sea soon. Yeah, right. They look so small from up here. What do you have in mind? Let's hold these guys.
Now, the
Make it worth my
cool thing, I guess, is that the GLA don't actually have any defenses on the south side of their base, which makes them prime targets for anything, really. If you were playing this differently and weren't being super aggressive with helixes, you could bring a lot of infantry and just drop those off, have them do the damage, and essentially, as we deal said damage to the GLA forces, they don't have enough money or time to replace them. What this means is they're going to find themselves with absolutely no workers. And if they have no workers, they can't rebuild anything. Not being able to rebuild anything means that, well, they're kind of screwed.
Unit lost.
I don't actually know if this is one of those circumstances where they treat it as two separate AIs. I believe that's the case because if I remember correctly, the GLA just eventually stopped building anything. It's been a while since I recorded this, but regardless, as long as I take out the GLA command center, I shouldn't have anything else to really worry about. And losses in helixes at the moment isn't really something I'm too worried about. Also, the incredible range of that Stinger sight is not something I was expecting.
Make it worth my time. We're going to ruin somebody's day. Yeah, what?
So at this point, the GLA base is essentially destroyed. I don't really have to worry about too much coming from them, which also means that any of the attacks from the GLA side of things is also none of my concern. That was actually one of the few times that the particle cannon decided to pick something else, which is surprising, to be honest. I should probably be picking different spots for some of these buildings. Like the nuclear silo, I should probably build way farther in the south. One, that base doesn't come under attack. At least I don't remember it coming under attack. And frankly speaking, it's just area that I can develop and not have to worry about space limitations. Now, we've already seen a little bit of the US base. There's, in a similar vein to the GLA base, they don't have as many defenses on the south.
Unit lost.
So if I can destroy the GLA base, I should be able to just push up into the US base, take out their power, and not really have to worry about too much. Now, I'm choosing to go and target the power. If I'm lucky, I should be able to knock out enough power plants there to knock out the Patriot systems. If I take out the Patriot systems, I then open up basically the rest of the base, or I can at least carpet bomb and do some more damage that way. And sadly, there's just too many power plants in the area. I think one of the benefits of taking out the GLA base first, or maybe one of the reasons why it's easier, is that the GLA, since they use their workers as income generators, they don't just have them lying around in their base, just kind of spaced out, which just makes it easier to hunt them down.
Lost.
Now, what I could do, and what I believe I will be doing eventually, is I'll just be using an EMP and having that knock out the Patriot system, which, all in all, is a much smarter choice. I could have also tried putting it further into the base, try to knock out 2 Patriot missile systems, but I think at this point I was kind of tired of having to deal with multiple. Just even this first area, so having it, trying to set it further in, maybe getting destroyed, it's just not something I really want to worry about too much.
Unit lost.
Also, funnily enough, it took out the Chinooks, which I wasn't really expecting.
What do you have in mind? It's ours.
Unit lost.
It is time extra large.
I think I lost an Overlord tank here to the hit and run that we've seen, what was it, a couple missions ago, where rocket buggies just, their speed is annoying to have to deal with.
Going to ruin somebody's day. We're going to ruin somebody's day.
Unit lost.
We can also see how a lot of Patriot missile systems together is frankly annoying to have to deal with. And I was really hoping I'd knock them out. Like, a particle cannon is not something that isn't... it takes a lot of power, so... How is it still around? I don't know. Regardless, at this point, I've got a lot of Overlord tanks, and I'm not facing any attacks, and they don't have any income whatsoever. After all, I've taken out all of the supply drops. They have absolutely no supply centers, and the same goes for the GLA. If I wanted to, I could probably sit back, tank whatever particle cannon attacks they want to do, and just take 50 minutes to nuclear missile everything. Not that there's much a point, you should just finish it off, but, you know. Sometimes you just want to make it glow. Also, I believe that that one tower actually is damaged at the start. I forget if it took any ancillary damage from bomb strikes and anything else I had earlier in the mission. Which, if it was only cutscene damage, that would actually be funny. It has to be said that the initial entrance into the US base is actually one of the hardest things in this mission, and something that you should probably only attempt if you have maybe some firestorm capability, definitely long range, and maybe avoid the Battlemaster Overlord tank, unless you have a lot. Just because, well, Overlord tanks suck at shooting up a cliff, and you tend to lose quite a few if you're not careful. Also, we can see I have a shit ton of money, and this is entirely because of my internet centers, or internet center, as well as a ton of extra hackers.
Gatling cannon is ready.
I'm not quite sure why the death animation's bugged there, but something to experience, I guess.
I am big. I am in control. This better be good.
Now, all these pilots, sure, I can toss them in Overlord tanks. Doesn't really matter what you do with them.
What is next?
I don't really see them ever being... The word's not necessary, but even just nice to get. And by the time you're at the end, at the back of the US base, you've probably got enough to just blow through this mission. A couple of extra ranks here and there is probably not gonna change all that much.
Overlord is waiting. You won't be wrong. This is the Overlord tank.
Also, I don't seem to have played my cards right, where I took out enough other buildings to regain or re-give power to certain areas of the US base. I think I started with something like 9-ish Overlord tanks. Ending it with 4 kind of shows just how much certain defenses will take out of you. Again, by the time you get to this point, and I think I lost a whole ton of Overlord tanks coming up this side just because of that one tower. And yeah, by the time you defeat the US base, there should be absolutely no reason why the GLA give you any issue whatsoever. Sadly, I wasn't thinking about it and didn't take the time to build something like the ECM tank or other units that maybe haven't been seen as frequently, that probably could have used a little bit of spotlight. I think at this point, I had restarted this mission a number of times, specifically at the point where I was destroying the supply drops in the US base, because I was trying to find this perfect ratio where my helixes would be able to destroy the supply center, but not get shot at by the Patriot missile systems. It didn't quite work out, so it forced a couple resets. I also lost a few times just because if you don't rush the southern portion or southeastern corner of the map, you really lose out quickly because you don't get the funds that you could. You don't steal those funds away from the GLA. And there's benefits that they take advantage of, such as the refinery that makes vehicles cost less for them, as well as the hospital that just heals them up and makes them just that much more dangerous. It's also pretty self-evident that if and when you do get nuclear missile silos, you should get the nuclear tank and nuclear or uranium shell upgrades, like, immediately. The increased speed that we've seen already, and I forget if we've ever seen the increased damage from the uranium shells, is something that you should always get. It's very much like how great the Anthrax upgrades are for GLA, where by getting those, you're leaving pools of poison to damage any infantry that happens to be in the area. And that same sort of leftover damage is something that, with the Chinese, you'll appreciate, especially if you only have Battle Masters.
Millions cheer our soldiers in parades from Paris to Hong Kong. Surviving leaders of the crushed GLA will soon be tried by the World Court. With America's power now reaching no further than its own shores, the world looks to China for strength and prosperity. Tomorrow, the Premier will open the first meeting of Eurasian Unity League. It is for all of us a new day.
And much like the first game, the Chinese campaign ends in a city being cheered on by its locals. as always, I really want to thank everybody who's taken the time to watch my videos. I really appreciate it. This has been a constant journey, a fun one at that, going through all of the Command & Conquer games. There is the General's Challenge that will be coming up. I don't really know which one I'll be doing first, and if it comes as a surprise as to which ones will be played, well, maybe you're not paying attention to the polls. For anybody who hasn't been participating in the thread stuff, I highly suggest it. It's always nice seeing people leave comments or give me extra information on some things I may have missed. For the General's Challenge, we'll be doing the Laser General, we will be doing the Nuclear Power General, as well as the Toxin General. A lot of this information will come in future videos, so hold on tight to your spoilers. We'll get there when we get there, as always. Additionally, once the General's Challenge is over, I will try to get out some videos about the two games, just to cover all the maps that we've seen, see what the triggers are and all that, as I've done before. Once that's done, maybe we'll delve into some mods just as a sort of aperitif. If not, we'll go straight into the next official game, which I believe is Command & Conquer 3. I'm already kind of wincing at that one. There's also going to be a little bit of talking, and something I don't really want to suppress in the thread, which is Generals 2. Generals 2, unfortunately, will likely never see the light of day. I believe it was canceled indefinitely or completely, however you want to term it. And there's some information that's available online. There's a few trailers. I believe they were planning on releasing a demo. I think there was a private demo / like private alpha beta test that went on with some people, which is usually where most of this, the trailer and video footage comes from. That details a lot more in the story of the Pan-Asia Euro committee or group, as well as the return of the GLA, and I believe the last one was the US forces or something else. Regardless, I will be posting a few things in the thread, but I don't think I'll be making a video. So if anybody is looking forward to that sort of information, definitely check out the thread, the forums, and say hi if you haven't already. With that, again, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.